Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Kelma B'Kelma. This is episode number 2. My name is Eric Balakrishnan. I'm the country representative for Yes Europe. And joining us for today's interview is Tiago Vicente. Tiago is a governing board member for the European Youth Energy Network Development Team. The European Youth Energy Network, or EYEN, are a fellow European youth organization like Yes Europe that aim to provide a voice to young people to help facilitate the European energy transition. Yes, Europe and I have collaborated pretty frequently in the past, and like we've always had good communication between ourselves. Tiago himself helps people know more about energy and informs young people on how they can make an impact. Tiago is also an energy engineer in the information and education team of ADENE, which is the Portuguese Energy Agency. And Tiago and I were fortunate enough to meet each other about a month ago, or a month ago from when we're recording this, at the Athens Yes Europe annual conference hosted by Yes Europe Greece. I was there representing Yes Europe Malta, and Tiago was there on behalf of EYEN. So, Tiago, thank you for agreeing to come on our interview channel.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much for having me. Super happy to be here.
Perfect. So, yeah, Tiago, let's start on your involvement with EYEN. Right? So, could you elaborate on what introduced you and what I introduced you on regarding your role within EYEN and how you discovered them, how your involvement came to be and how it developed, what your responsibilities are?
Yep, of course. A lot of questions in one. I hope I don't take the full time with just answering the first one, so I'll try to be brief.
Sure.
But if you'll allow me, just very briefly about EYEN, for those who don't know us, like you said, and very well, we are the European Youth Energy Network. By being a network, it means that we bring together other youth organizations that are energy focused, such as Yes Europe, like you mentioned. We have 12 member organizations in across 8 different countries in Europe. And what we do is we connect those organizations with each other, with relevant stakeholders in the energy transition, being that our mission is to place youth at the heart of the European energy transition, so always with the clean energy transition in mind. And we also coordinate action between those youth organizations. We empower young people in youth organizations or not, or in general. And we also do advocacy work ourselves for a better youth engagement in the energy transition. EYEN was created, or the idea of EYEN was born in 2019. I am not part of the organization from the beginning, but it was the actual work started in 2020, even if the official launch of the network only happened in 2021. Officially, you can see it in our YouTube channel. We had a live event online. We were very lucky to have had the presence of the Director General of the European Commission in the event, also the Deputy Director for ARENA, the International Renewables Energy Agency, and that was basically our official event, official launch event, let's say. As I'm sure you're aware, it's not super easy to establish an organization legally as well.
Yeah.
So even though we were active for a while, the officialization, let's say, as an international nonprofit, which we are now, based in Brussels as well, it happened in March 2022. Of course, like I mentioned, we had done some work already with that. You can also see the story of EYEN if you're curious about how such an idea is born, how you gather young people to establish an organization or a network in this case. We have in our website, youthenergy.eu, there is our story, and our communications team did quite a good job. I think it's a fun read as well. So if you want to know more, please do check it out. My time with the network started in 2021. I found out about it through a friend of mine here in Portugal. He was part of a project of EYEN, and basically he introduced me to EYEN. I wasn't very active, let's say, in youth organizations or even at the European level. I like you said, I work at ADENE. I acted mostly at the national level, in terms of energy literacy, energy efficiency. But I was curious to learn more about the European scope of it. And also, although I'm an engineer, I've always had a special interest in communications. And also part of my work as part of the information and education team is to communicate energy, like I mentioned, trying to improve energy literacy of people in general, from all walks of life, from all areas of work, from children, students to specialists in energy, a little bit of everything. Anyways, I wanted to work a little bit more on communications, so I joined the communications team of ADENE. At the time, I was charged with setting up the newsletter.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to it, please do, because again, the communications team did a really good job, and I can't take any credit for that because the newsletter got way better after I left the communications team. But yeah, you can learn a little bit about our network, about other organizations as well, a bit of the news in the energy sector, especially the youth part of it. So in 2021, I was part of the communications team, and then we created in 2022, which is now our flagship event, the European Youth Energy Forum.
Yeah.
And I hope we'll have some time to talk about that a little further ahead.
Sure.
But anyways, I was one of the coordinators for the forum that happened in Lisbon and is going to happen in Berlin this year. So for 2022, that was a bit of my role. And in November, I joined the governing board that I am now part of. More specifically, my position is a governing board member for EYEN Development. So ensuring a little bit that the network is growing, that we're growing in the right direction, that the teams are functioning as they should, provide support wherever needed. And this shouldn't be confused for what we call the director of secretariat, who is in charge of the day-to-day operations. The role of the board is more focused on strategy. So in terms of our mission, of our goals, where we want to go, if things are flowing the way that they should. Obviously, in these types of organizations, as I'm sure you are well aware, there is always the need for a lot of work and not enough people, and we end up just doing whatever we need to do in order to make things go forward.
And yeah, just to follow up with what Tiago said, we'll leave a link to EYEN's website to see their story, and then also their newsletter in the description of the YouTube video. So yep, absolutely go check them out, and I'll also say it in the outro as well. So you segued right next to my next question. So could you talk about some events that EYEN have been involved in, and what you aim to achieve with them in like a wider context?
Okay. We have our general assemblies, which are internal events where we decide the most important points with the member organizations, so with all of the other youth organizations. For example, the elections of the governing board, which happens every 3 years. Any changes to the internal rules that we need to follow, and but it's more of a let's say operational or legal event that we need to have every 6 months. In terms of events for more externally, we have the European Youth Energy Forum that I was just mentioning.
Yes.
And we had the first edition last year, and we had as partners the European Energy Network. They are the network of energy agencies in Europe. They have, I believe, more than 20 different countries represented in their network. And it was actually a funny coincidence, because they are the European Energy Network and we are the European Youth Energy Network.
Yeah.
But anyways, we partnered with them. The way they work is that every year there is a different agency, a national energy agency, that takes the presidency. And ADENE was the president for 2022. So that was fortunate, because we managed to gather the two networks and create the first forum. The main goal for the forum was and is to create the space for youth to voice their opinions about how to engage in the European energy transition, and then to connect them with stakeholders, or bring their opinions to stakeholders and try to make some real change happen. Mm-hmm. So main challenge was how do we make that happen, because it's a big challenge. And we didn't want to have just another event and forget about the event and just do it for the sake of doing an event. So we were thinking, how do we ensure that we have something to show after the event? And the answer for that was a position paper.
Yeah.
So we set up on gathering those young people, and those young people weren't necessarily going to be from the network. We wanted to have an event that was open for anyone who wanted to apply. So we opened applications at the European level, and we had more than 200 applicants. And we asked them to write an abstract, to write a motivation letter. Why did they feel like they were the right people to be there? And we selected 45 of them, and we had online sessions to begin with. So we started in September with online sessions, and we went all the way through the end of November, meeting every week, trying to understand how to write that position paper, how to come up with actually something concrete that can help not only policymakers but also the private sector, education as well, on how to improve youth engagement. So we had.
Sorry, continue. I just wanted to ask, because you touched upon youth engagement and trying to sort of create this sort of feeling and sentiment of activism, right? And maybe just as a bit of a segue, like in a wider context of being part of a community of people who are helping to maybe facilitate the energy transition, why is it so important to have these types of networks in place? Like, what exactly do you think is the glue that brings everyone together?
Okay, well, I mean, these are a little bit of two. Obviously, they have connections, but they're a little bit different points when we're talking about the network, let's say, and that is the main reason for EYEN to exist are its members and connecting all of its members. And then you have EYEF, which also comes in at the part of our advocacy work and the empowerment of young people in general. Because there are different ways of being engaged in the energy transition. Obviously, you can be engaged by yourself as an individual. You can be engaged through your work. You can be engaged through a youth organization, or you can be engaged by going to these events, for example. Right? The 45 participants that we had, they found a way. Well, some of them were members, were part of member organizations. Some of them were just individuals, and they felt like that was the proper way for them to engage, to try and have their voices heard in terms of let's do this, this, and that, in order to engage in the energy transition, or to better engage in the energy transition. As for the network, well, I think the main points of why a network is important are, I would say, obvious. The knowledge sharing, like we experience in Athens at the annual conference, like you mentioned, raising opportunities for each other, being able to understand different realities, because I think networks are important for anybody in across any sector if you want to have an impact in what you're doing. But I do believe that they're even more important when you're talking about young people, and when you're talking about international action at European level. For sure, I'm in Portugal. If I'm talking about Malta, where you're from, for sure we have some different realities, some different issues that we're tackling. Obviously, some of them are going to be quite similar, but through this network, well, first of all, I don't think we would be here talking right now if it wasn't for the network. It would have been a big coincidence. But we managed to learn from each other quite a lot, and I think we can agree that young people are tendentially discriminated in these points where you hear things like, well, he's too young, he doesn't have enough experience, or whatever, and we do gain a lot from being in these types of network, in terms of knowledge, in terms of experience as well, in terms of creating opportunities that maybe you wouldn't have in another way. Also, when EYEN was created, it was created mostly because there wasn't a network in place already at the European level. We have at least not a network gathering other youth organizations, because you have, for example, Yes Europe, which is a network in itself, right? You have different country representatives in different country organizations. But
Yeah.
then if you're talking about engaging with Poly Energy from Italy or Reboot from Portugal, maybe you don't have an easy access to those young people, and so each of us, we are working towards the same goals, but we are working alone, you know. And if you have an organization, a network, or a network of networks, if you want, we sometimes call ourselves a federation, then we can help you bring together and also take our purpose to organizations or to the commission, let's say, or to whatever we feel like we need to go. And more specifically, we can coordinate action. For example, going to COP. That is something that AEN is starting to work with ACE Europe as well on finding a good way to be at COP at the and have the best impact that we can. That is just an example.
I agree with you completely, especially like the involvement of young people, particularly at this stage. Like if you consider by 2050, when there's that pledge for complete decarbonization, if you imagine the kind of world that we're going to be living in 2050, anyone who's in their sort of 20s or a teenager, or even in their early 30s, they're going to be the future doctors, lawyers, engineers, politicians, researchers, scientists in 2050. They're going to be the ones who establish an industry. And I think at this early stage, it's not really an early stage, but let's call it an early stage for context. If young people are involved now, then they get to kind of manufacture the future world that they want to live in, because it's eventually going to be them that inherits everything, right? So that's obviously like super important.
Yeah, and if I can add to that,
yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I totally agree with you when you say that our generation and the ones after ours are the future, and that is something that we hear a lot, you know, and it is also something that we hear as kind of an excuse as not to have us in the real discussions right now, you know, because it's like you are still getting there, you know. And although that is true, it's not only about the future. And by the way, 2050 is going to be a little too late.
Yeah.
So it's also about having us at what I like to call the big boys table now, you know, because we can offer a lot of added value now. It's obviously we don't have as much experience as somebody who has worked for 30 years in the energy sector, but we are also tendentially not as biased as those people are. We offer fresh views on the issue. We are open-minded, and apart from all of these very nice things that we can say about young people, what I have experienced in the last years, and which that is what really amazes me, is like how much effort and how much time young people are willing to put into this, you know, like without being paid. Because when we're talking about these organizations, almost all of them are volunteer based, you know, like we are, like Yes Europe is, like ADENE is. We are not getting paid for this. So I'm getting off work at 6 or 7 and I'm working for 2 hours or 3 or whatever the weekends. That is something that maybe you lose a little bit when you have a family, when you have so many other things to think about, you know. So it's not only about the future, it's about including young people now, and not including just for the sake of looking good because we are including youth. It's actually putting young people at the decision making process, at the discussions for policy making, for policy implementation and monetization, you know.
So, like on the topic of inclusiveness, and from your experience, right? Could you describe the mindset that young people should have in order to approach like brainstorming and critically evaluating solutions to challenges and like problems in a holistic way? Essentially, there's so many sort of transferable skills that we learn at this young age, but it's really important to kind of piece it all together. So, like, what would you kind of recommend young people, not for them just to get involved in a specific way, but how to approach kind of problem solving?
Okay, I think you've already touched a very important point there, which is the holistically, right?
Yeah,
Thinking about the big picture.
yeah,
Because it's quite easy to, and this is not only for young people, just for about anyone, for us to get a little bit um, lost in terms of like we focus on what is our specific problem or the specific issue that we're tackling at the moment, and you forget a little bit about the bigger picture, about why you are doing things, so that is, I believe that is the first step when you're engaging, let's say, in a in a youth organization or whatever, or doing an event or whatever you want to call it. I think the first step is to stop for a little bit and discuss, like you were saying, brainstorming. That is super important.
Yeah.
Also to gather people from different sectors, different areas, different realities. That is also super important. And I believe young people are really good at that. We are quite international, I would say, more and more. But yeah, so basically you, at the start of your project, and I'm a bit at fault with this as well. When I start something, I'm really eager to start working right away. But I think it's important to slow down a little bit and come up with a vision and a mission for exactly what you want to do before I started working, because then you might come to a conclusion after days or months or whatever that you're not looking at the problem at the correct way. And you do that by, like you were saying, by brainstorming, by gathering a lot of people at the same place, and by discussing it. Now, this is easier said than done, and the brainstorming process itself needs to be conducted in the proper way, because otherwise you can end up having 15 people just discussing for the sake of discussing. And I think one of the most important points when gathering different people to try and come up with something is to have an open-minded, and also, or to be open-minded, and also to be able to change your mind. And this is something that is not that easy to do. Particularly if you already have an idea that it is very clear in your head that you don't want to let go of it. And sometimes what happens, and this happens everywhere, it's not only with young people, is you are discussing something, and at a certain point you are discussing not the arguments of a person, but you are discussing with that person. And it is very important to debate the argument itself. And if you come to the conclusion that your argument was not correct, then you need to be able to let go, and learn from other people, because obviously, like I've said already, people come from different realities, and especially for young people, we are still we are at a stage in our careers where we are still learning, and those processes can be a very good way of learning about the issue as well.
For sure. And I think when we were speaking in Athens, I may have said this to you or some other people at the conference, we're all there and we all have reached the same conclusion, right? So we all have reached the same conclusion about what we need to do, how we need to commit to things. But because we all come from different backgrounds and have different personalities and different experiences, we've all reached that same conclusion in 1,000 different ways. So when you are getting into kind of informative debates, but also then in a way, debates about people's personal opinions. As you said, really importantly, it's not about debating the person, you're debating the argument. And that's like super important from like a collaborative point of view. You're never going to agree with everyone. In fact, you will disagree with everyone. So I think it's really important to just look at something in a skeletal way and not kind of peel the onion layers too much and try to get to the root of exactly why somebody is thinking like that. I think that's just always personal to them. But I think what's really important is that people's opinion should be respected, as long as you can feel that it's going to, I guess, contribute to the progress that we need to contribute to. But you're always going to come across different personalities, and especially at this young age, it's really essential that nobody feels left out of a community whenever we're trying to commit to progress.
Of course, and it's going to take a really long time. I think it's important when we get into it that we know from the start that it's going to take time, and it's part of the process. We need to spend some of the time to do things the right way.
So speaking about like the process and communities, so at Yes Europe, I feel that like events like the pandemic beginning 3 years ago, and then annual conferences, which is obviously really specific to us, and many other Yes Europe members also feel that, especially like within the strategy and operations team. People feel like those are like the catalysts that accelerate like our activity, productivity. Like, we tend to launch projects in the wake of sort of these like catalytic things, right? So what would you say does that at EYEN? What do you think really accelerates the productivity and activity at EYEN? Do you think it's the launching of papers or conferences, or is it just like wanting to kind of be motivated to work?
Well, I think there are different ways of pushing forward, let's say. We have our annual gatherings in Brussels that we started last year, and I believe those are quite important because after so long at meeting online, you meet in person, and it's a huge boost of motivation for everyone who is there. Apart from that, I think motivation needs to come from everyday tasks, like from having a proper framework set up for people to be able to do their jobs. And if you see that your job is actually having some impact in what you're trying to do or what you're trying to reach, that is going to give you motivation. With that being said, obviously this is very easy to say, not as easy to do, especially in volunteer organizations. Sometimes I think, and this is, I just want to say this from the start, this should be the exception to the rule and not the rule. But sometimes you need to start the project in order to then have a boost of motivation and to start recruiting more people and to push the organization forward. Now, this is what happened with our energy, the AF that I was talking about, this energy forum. We didn't have the amount of people necessary to create the forum, to properly organize it like we did. So we took on the challenge just the same, and then we started recruiting and we started getting more people, started to get the work done, and it was rushed, because we were on a tight schedule. Yeah. But looking back, I think I can say that it was a success, and we will continue to do it every year. If we had not taken on the challenge, maybe we would have missed the opportunity. It wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't be organizing it in Berlin right now. But like I was saying, this can be a huge boost of motivation, not only for the people organizing it, but for the organization itself, because you are seeing proper work being done. Of course, if you do this frequently, you risk reaching a breaking point in an organization. If you are just taking on projects without having the foundations of the organization built, then you risk things going south.
For sure, completely agree. So we like to establish like a trend with these interviews, which I did in episode 1 with Dr. Paul Refalo, where like my final question is like purely about sort of capturing like the motivation and the interest of young people to get involved, get talking, maybe on like a very simple level, but then also kind of organically grow and maybe develop a career or like something even bigger within that sector. So obviously, when you're looking to be part of a youth organization where it's young people who are involved, it's really important to make it fun, interesting, exciting, engaging, but also it is really serious work that we would like to do at the same time. So being somebody within that generation as well, and I'm also with that generation, how would you kind of see kind of like operating that fine line of capturing like the interest and motivation of maybe like university students, but also kind of communicating that the work that we kind of need to do as a community is also like super important?
That is actually a really, really good point. And I believe our communications team has been doing a good job at passing on this message. Our communication, like our brand, I think it speaks like we are young people. We kind of do things the fun way, let's say, but we are also serious about what we're doing. And this is a serious issue, let's say. And I believe most young people will agree with us when we say that we need to act fast and push for our work as catalysts for the energy transition. If you'll allow me, I would like to say a little bit about myself when I joined EYEN. Like I said before, I never engaged in any activism or any youth organization or anything of the sorts. So you have two different sides of the issue here. One of them is for young people to want to be involved because they believe in the mission. And the other one is they want to be involved because they will learn as well and grow themselves as well. And that is totally acceptable. When you interview somebody to join your organization, if they say, I want to learn more about the European sector, about energy, the European level, whatever, or I want to learn more about communications or about partnership, I want to grow because at my work I think I'll benefit from this youth organization as well. That is totally fine, as long as they are willing to work for the mission as well. You need to have both of them, not being in the organization just so that you can have it on your CV.
Yeah.
But with that being said, my advice for young people would be just, first of all, make sure that you have the time, that you are willing to dedicate the certain amount of hours that the organization requires. Make sure that you are joining because you are aligned with the mission of the organization, and also make sure that you are joining the team that will allow you to grow as well. And when I joined, honestly, and I'll be very honest right now, I didn't understand ADENE. I didn't understand what ADENE was about. I thought I would be doing communications work like I do at work, like teaching people a little bit more about energy, about youth engagement. And the truth is, AYEN is mostly about the other youth organizations, so giving the stage to other young people. That is mostly our role. And when I learned that, I was like, okay, so this makes a lot of sense. This is aligned with what I want to do, and that's why I've been there for around 2 years, and well, I'll stick around.
I hope we all stick around, to be honest, with these organizations, because that's what we need, right? We need availability and interest, but also sort of like committing to a vision, right? I think that's really critical for us as communities and networks to be able to collaborate together, but also collaborate within, to be able to commit to the kind of work that we need to do to help facilitate these processes. So on that note, I think we're going to call it a wrap on episode 2 of Kelma B'Kelma. You can check out Tiago's organization, the European Youth Energy Network, and also the European Youth Energy Forum in the link in the description, their newsletter as well, and also the event that they'll be hosting in Berlin in October and November?
Yeah, end of October, beginning of November. Yeah.
November, for sure. And there'll be online links for the live stream as well. Would there be released at the same time? Yes, Europe Malta will be resharing a lot of things in the build up to the event. So make sure you follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram. We will definitely, Yes Europe and EYEN are always exploring collaboration opportunities. So this is definitely not the first, and it definitely won't be the last. And hopefully it's not the last time that EYEN and Yes Europe Malta have any kind of collaboration opportunity. And thank you, Tiago, for coming on. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man, and congratulations for this great initiative.
Cheers, man. Thank you so much. And this has been me, Eric Balakrishnan. And thank you for watching Kelma B'Kelma episode